Confessions podcast.
Welcome, everyone. I'm Laura, or Oda, and I am a virtual assistant project management agency owner where we help small business owners get the help they need behind the scenes so that they can grow confidently, knowing that there's some help for them.
Yeah. And I'm Angelique with Lady Powerhouse Solutions. Laura and I do really similar things. We both have, a team. We both do projects and event management. We have been working together and partnering for over 2 years now. And
Yeah.
both of our businesses are thriving as a result. So, and that's kind of why we started the podcast. We wanted to model what it looks like when women support each other instead of trying to compete. Um, and so we started the podcast so we could provide a platform for other women to do the same and share their stories. And we have had some fabulous guests. Today is no exception.
It is not. It's so nice to have you here. I am going to introduce you. We have Amy Babish here with us today. I had to get to your bio. All right. So Amy is a somatic coach and house therapist, feng shui, with over 20 years of expertise as a mentor, facilitator, licensed psychotherapist, credentialed art therapist, NLP mindset practitioner, intuitive, and relationship expert. She's devoted her career to helping powerful women unlock the more that has been waiting for them and creating lasting change in themselves, life, work, their relationships, lineage, and legacy. This is the work for people who've plateaued in psychotherapy or mindset work. Amy curates private coaching, intensives, retreats, classes, and year longish programs to reconnect you to your aliveness, increasing your capacity to receive more love, joy, and connection, as well as success. She guides global leaders, Fortune 200 or Fortune 20 executives,
Ooh, big difference
entrepreneurs.
there.
You're right. I'm like, that's huge. Peace builders and innovators who know there must be more. Through what has felt evasive to dissolve intergenerational patterns, integrate soul level assignments, build nervous system capacity, and connect you to the practical magic of your home and land with humility, pee your pants laughter, and je ne sais quoi.
Ooh, je ne
Her
sais quoi.
je ne sais quoi. All right. And her social impact business values integrity, joy, aliveness, and dismantling white supremacy. She lives her best perimenopausal life, yes,
Yeah.
outside of DC on the Doeg land she stewards with her Japanese teen, Alpha of Alpha's partner, and Golden Doodle.
Je
Doggies.
ne sais quoi. It's just fun to say.
It is fun to say.
It's just fun to say. I honestly can't say that I know exactly what that means.
Like a, I don't
It's
know how to.
something you
Well,
can't
I'm
put
a
your finger
French
on.
teacher, so I know how
Oh,
she say
it's
it, but
something you can't put your I mean, it's perfect. Now what does that mean? It's something you can't quite put your finger.
It's like, what is that? Is it magic? Hmm, we don't know.
I
yeah.
love it.
Yeah.
I love it. So, okay, I got to get this out of the way because the first thing I noticed when you joined the studio was your hair. And so I just, for everyone who is like just loving her hair, it's called Hair Story Co-Wash. We're going to drop the link in the show notes because I looked at her hair. I was like, oh my God, because I was dealing with mine this morning. I had to wash it twice, deep condition for 10 minutes, and then brush it out, and then use like 3 different products in it. And she's like, oh, I just washed it and did this. So anyway, go get Hair Story Co-Wash, and evidently there's a generic that Trader Joe's makes that's also called Co-Wash or something like that, that her daughter uses, and it's quite effective as well.
Yeah.
It's an investment, but I only wash my hair once a week.
Yeah.
And it's just a scrunch, and a razor cut. I razor cut my hair. Those are the two secrets. No products, no hair dryers, very east
Yeah, I
edge.
haven't used heat on my hair in
Mhm.
a long time, mostly because I'm lazy. Um, Not because, I have a real and my hair's really fine, but I have a lot of it. And then when my hair went gray, it started doing this. Now I've had straight hair, couldn't hold a curl to save my life the majority of my adulthood and teen years. So this right here, on the one hand, I'm like, cool. On the other hand, this is a pain. This is a lot of work.
Yeah.
And I'm really rethinking someone that I greatly admire. She wrote Eat, Love, Pray, and I'm blanking on her name.
Elizabeth Gilbert.
Elizabeth Gilbert. I had the last
Mhm.
name and I was thinking Lisa for some reason, but Elizabeth Gilbert just shaved her head recently. And she wrote an article in the Oprah magazine about it and how empowering and freeing it has been for her. Highly recommend that. But we're here to talk to Amy today. And Amy, one of the things that just like I was like, okay, you have to come talk more about this was we do meet and greets with guests that we've never had on before that aren't like somebody we already know basically. So this Amy stranger comes to us for a meet and greet and she says, I've lived 27 lives. And I was like, yes, please tell me all
Yes.
about this. So we're just going to jump just right into that.
Let's go for it. So one of the questions you asked was like, are you talking about past lives? I said, we're not talking about that. I'm aware of that. I'm talking about the life that I'm in this lifetime.
Mhm.
So I have the evolution of who I am as a person and my business has changed so dramatically. And the through line is my true self. So I was a nanny in Beverly Hills in college. I was a camp counselor at a sleepaway camp for 5-year-olds. I was a swim coach and lifeguard. I didn't know I was going to be an art therapist, but I was uh, working at a law firm as a receptionist after undergrad. Like all these twists and turns. I started as a child and adolescent therapist with sex abuse and sex trafficking and drug trafficking for 10
Mm,
years in DC. Um, and each step of the way, as these iterations kept on happening, I knew that I was tending to a through line that was something bigger than I had words for. And each each point in time, sometimes it's like, yes, I'm doing this, and sometimes like I'm doing this. Uh,
I love that.
yeah. So when I was a psychotherapist, I shifted when I had my daughter. I was living, I used to be married to a Japanese national. I was living intergenerationally with his parents in Japan when our daughter was in her first year. And I had been in public mental health for about a decade. And my dad sent me a video about Brene Brown. And
Mm,
this was like 2011. And I wrote to her and I said, I wish I would have known about shame and worthiness versus uh, like thinking about your self concept, which is a way we used to talk about those things for all of these youth and their families and their
yeah.
foster families and their biological families, with all the families I work with within the system. And I said, can I come learn from you? And so when I did that, I didn't know that I was going to be shifting into private practice. I shifted into private practice, and I was one of the first 3 people on the East Coast doing her work. And
Nice.
then I was invited to be a consultant. And each step of the way, they were all kind of compounding choices, which I didn't know until a
Yeah.
certain point. Um, and I'm so grateful that I was willing to be brave. And it doesn't mean that it's always successful,
Right.
but all of those iterations of me, the Amy who was very shy. My nickname in high school was Goof Troop. I didn't really speak out loud. I would hold my shirt over my mouth and speak like this because I was really, really, really introverted.
Wow.
And um, like there's just so many different parts of me that live in me now. Um, Also in high school, I became the homecoming queen, and it was like, am I being punked? Am I on camera, candid camera? Because all of my peer group who were in the homecoming court, I first didn't even know. I was like, do they really need to say my name when they announce that I'm on the homecoming court? Like, I think this is a joke here. Um,
Hmm.
and all of the peers were cheerleaders, and I'm just like this very, very introverted, um, super awkward teenager. And it wasn't a practical joke. It wasn't mean spirited. It's just that I even in high school I had such a diverse personality around um, the athletics I did, the academics I did,
Mhm.
the volunteering I did, the work I did. Like
It sounds very well rounded.
Yeah.
looking back on it, it was not well rounded. That was the intention. Um, and all of those versions live in me now, all of those lives.
Right.
And so the version of me who lived in Japan who couldn't read Japanese, the version of me who's been through the divorce, the version of me whose soul said in 2020, no more psychotherapy. So all of those versions have compounded to live in me, and it really gives me the ability to have an immense bandwidth for people's humanity. And
Mm.
that's one of the biggest things that I work with clients around is that many of us want to hold on to kind of something that's like so precious we don't give room for it to evolve, and nothing's nothing's ever permanent. And
Yeah.
really being able to have um, grace and compassion, or at the very least neutrality, for people who aren't choosing the same way we would choose or how we would like them to choose. And
Mhm.
all the lives that I've lived in this lifetime give me like a real lived experience, not just an academic perspective or a professional
Yeah.
perspective. It's just like
Yeah.
I carry immense humility around who I am in this flavor at this juncture, um, in a way that I didn't have access to for many years. I didn't know about. Um, and I think, especially for all the entrepreneurs who are listening, no matter if you are a human design person or not, like we are, many people are on a path of evolution that they don't become conscious to until you're really ready. And when you're
Yeah.
ready, that grace
Mhm.
that comes in is just life changing for how you relate to yourself, how you relate to others, how you relate to competitors or people who are doing things very differently than you. Um, and yeah, that's part of my amalgamation of the 27 lives, not even getting into my past lives.
Right.
I
Like
love it.
this life has already been so dynamic is the word that comes to mind. Um not in a dynamo way, but in a way that, you've moved through, and I when as you're saying this, I'm like, "Oh yeah, this was for me and that was for me." And
Mhm.
so I can definitely see a correlation between, the way you see it and the way I could also apply that to my life.
Mhm.
Um, you mentioned working with, high achieving um, global leaders, entrepreneurs, Fortune 20, majority of them women. And, um, and it's interesting to me that, they have had complex trauma too, intergenerational patterns and
Mhm.
trauma that um, you said, you meet them and they feel like they've created this incredible life, and yet they're still feels like there's something more, but they can't quite get there. They can't quite figure it out. Um, and you know, I want you to talk more about that because we see women that are out there that are doing things for social change that are highly successful or wealthy or whatever. And we think, well, they've got all their shit together.
Yeah, yeah,
Right.
yeah. And even those, you know, when we're in that place, and I can feel it in my heart as I speak, when we carry that unresolved piece, if it's from this lifetime or if it's the intergenerational patterning or epigenetically activated ancestral trauma that's living within us or patterns that are living within us, it creates the lens for which we see ourselves around this place that's kind of not resolved. And it's how we we see others, and we're constantly looking for kind of what we call in constellation work. That's another process that I do, which is different than IFS because we kind of named that in the pre-talk.
Mhm.
But it's there's a Venn diagram around it. When we're in the good conscience of our ancestors, which can be the blood ancestors or the soul ancestors, we're looking to belong with loyalty. And so it's not about morality, it's not about ethics. It's like this is what helped this family or this person survive.
Mm.
And it might we might not I work with a lot of people who are adopted, so we don't even have to know our story. We don't have to know our family tree.
Mhm.
But what it oftentimes comes down to is belonging and not belonging.
Mm.
And when when people see a high achieving woman who looks like they have it all together, they're looking for evidence that they can't belong to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the high achieving woman is looking at someone else who might have a very different life, or even another high achieving woman, and looking for the I can't I chose my career over having children. I can't belong to that. I don't belong. And
Mhm.
so a good conscience is the way that families kept themselves safe. Like, and it doesn't make sense. It's not logical. And it's very different than belief work. And it keeps on showing up intergenerationally. It's carried through the family line
Mhm.
um,
Yeah.
for resolution.
Mm.
And the people that come to me are often uh, they took on that responsibility. They didn't know it consciously. They didn't know that's their
Right.
curriculum, but that's part of why they're here.
Yeah. And the one of the books that I did I was on a guest on a podcast yesterday, and we talked a lot about trauma. And one of the things that really helped me was The Body Keeps a Score, that book,
Mhm.
and No Bad Parts, which is, I always forget his first name, Shorts, that actually is the creator of the IFS model and the modality. And I'm actually learning that right now, going through a workbook that um, my IFS therapist recommended, or practitioner, not therapist, she's a practitioner. Um, and self is the place, right? That's the place we want to actually operate from. And I love the connection between the somatic work and the internal work, whether it's IFS or what was the other modality you mentioned?
So, so constellation work is actually it's different than it's not internal work. So somatic work is internal, IFS work is internal, and constellation work we actually work with representatives.
Ah,
So you
okay.
can work with objects or you can work with people, and so it externalizes what's in the field
Mm.
of what you're carrying, and uh, that can be very life changing for someone who has done. Even my clients that have done a lot of somatic work or a lot of IFS work, sometimes they get to the point of this thing still isn't moving, this thing
Mm,
still isn't shifting, and that's when the ancestral work can be very, very helpful.
gotcha.
Makes sense.
The constellation work, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
Um, and I love that again, you've had all this lived experience that allows you to be able to integrate the different modalities in a way that's custom, almost like customized for the client that you're working with. Um, but
And
one of the other things we like to talk about on here is abundance mindset versus
Mhm.
scarcity mindset in general. But one of the things, and I do believe this is true, that mindset lacks some effectiveness if your body's carrying this intergenerational patterning or trauma or some kind of systemic oppression like racism
Mhm.
and things like that. And so I'd love for you to talk more about that.
Yes, yes, yes. And I think that this is so important uh, because there's just in Google University, or even with some coaches or even some therapists, it's almost like there's something wrong with the client or there's something wrong with the person if they're not like the mindset's not changing. And so
Mm,
this can be so liberating and so much relief and compassion can come from this. So when we have agency and capacity and capabilities, we can easily like lickety split. Like I can do this. I'm gonna
mhm,
put my mind to it. And many high achievers and many successful entrepreneurs have that in certain parts of their life. When
Mhm.
it comes to, depending on the person, the 5 to 20% for most people, other people it's more, where we keep on getting the same medicine. We keep on having the same kind of relationships. We keep on getting the same results.
Mhm.
I wish that every person could hear it's not time for mindset work. And even taking abundance, so many different lineages come from famine. They
yeah,
come from genocide. They come from war.
Mhm.
And that is the survival mechanism. That is not even, we're not even getting into scarcity. Like there was nothing, right?
right,
And so those roots, those epigenetic roots live in the body. And they oftentimes look like it's being passed down. It might not be apples for apples, but it will show up in the lineage in different ways.
mhm,
And for entrepreneurs, especially what happens around epigenetics and intergenerational ancestral patterning is that oftentimes you're carrying an ancestor's failure around entrepreneurship in your body, and it's showing up in the field of your business or with
yeah,
clients or with money.
Mm.
And it is so confusing, let alone shaming for so many people to be told, if you just practice this mindset and you just did more mindset work, everything's going to like lickety split change with your relationship to money or the kind of clients you're attracting or the kind of supervisor you have. Like you name it, whatever that dynamic is, it's
yeah,
quite painful.
mhm.
And
But
for
and
some,
frustrating.
yeah,
Right.
and like
Yeah.
it's insanity. Like what am I doing wrong that this keeps on happening? Because when you get down
Mhm.
to this, the nuance of this work, it is actually not a belief because you believe congruently in the soul and the self, I'm worthy of abundance. I am
Mhm.
willing to break the intergenerational pattern. You're conscious of it, and unconsciously you're for it. It's congruent. And when that ancestor keeps on showing up, and you don't have to be psychic, you don't have to be
Mhm.
a seer. That
Yeah,
ancestor is literally coming through in what is being attracted because it's the field you're carrying,
yes, that
Mm.
energetic field.
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
energetic field. And it's like this unresolved pattern, it's more powerful than mindset work. It is
Right.
not about
Yes,
mindset work.
Well,
So
and that's the hard part we hear all the time. It's like, well, just a little bit more. It's there and this and that, and not everything works for everybody. We have stressed on that point for so long, whether it's marketing or how we work or how we do things. When Angelique and I are asked about competitiveness, and I'm like, we do things very differently. I have a way of working that drives her completely crazy. Like, how do you do that? And she works totally different from me, but that's the compliment, right? That's the okay, you see what I see and you can pull that all together. That's a great skill to have. So as we always think about that, not everything is for everybody. I don't learn how to do things the way majority of people do. So when you go and take a class or you do something, it's like, oh yeah, this isn't going to work for me. Where do you find, what is going to work? And it's the same thing. It's not just educational, but it's how we live our lives, how we're circling our spirituality and all the other stuff with it. So, yeah, very interesting. I love it.
it's like it's very, very nuanced. And I think that, it's so painful to see people who like literally, if this was easy to fix, you would have fixed it. It Mindset work is not always easy, but it's doable. It's like it's figure outable.
mhm,
Um, And when it's something that's so painful and so complex and very nuanced, that is usually when it's in the ancestral field.
Mm.
And there's not like, um, there's a great book around constellation work. It didn't start with me, or it didn't start with you. I'll send it for the show notes. Um, but thought leadership about ancestral work is not going to change it. It's like being in the field working with a practitioner is really recommended. And there's practitioners everywhere. There's practitioners. This field has been around since the 60s or 70s, and you don't have to be a psychotherapist. It's
Yeah.
being in right relationship with the practice and coming with an authentic intention.
Makes
Very
sense.
cool.
Those are the ingredients.
Yeah. Yeah. And one of the other things too that you work with is the feng shui. And you had a story about, and I found this really interesting because um, I am preparing to buy another home and land. Um, and so your story about when you bought your house and what happened, I'd love for you to share that with our audience, because again, I feel like this, you don't think it can affect your work if you, especially if
Yes.
you work from home, right? Like
Yes.
you're not leaving the house, you're not interacting with other, you have your own environment here that you have all the control over, and yet things aren't quite sitting, going as well as you'd want or whatever. So I'd love for you to share your story.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So the story, even of buying my home, is a story, but you get that if you sign up for my email sequence. So I'll give a little teaser there. So when you move into a home, if you own it or not, it is like a relationship. It is a relationship. And so just like when you hire somebody, or just like when you get into a romantic relationship, everyone's putting their best forward first.
Yeah.
And what happens is, just like the honeymoon in a romantic partnership or in a working relationship, the compounding nature of um, what's in the field of the home and the land show up in your life, in your relationships, in your work. So what happened for me, I had a very successful business, a group psychotherapy practice, for 10 years before moving into this house. And this house, her name is Magic Villa Evie. She's a dream house. She's a dream come true. And also, I didn't know about feng shui when I moved in this house. I was not fully immersed in it. I would say I was dabbling in it. Um, the kind of house I have, it's called a mid-century modern or a split level. So it means that there's different levels of the house, and the couple stairs up, a couple stairs down, and I have four of those couple stairs up, couple stairs down situations.
Wow.
So what happened in my business was, I mentioned I had this big change in 2020. Things were not as robust, but they still were manageable. I moved into this house in 2022, and my business took a nosedive within 9 months of moving here.
Wow.
And I had done all the work on mindset around money and worthiness. I grew really poor, very, very poor. I reconciled that relationship. And so to be affronted with, it felt like it was like a curveball
Yeah.
that I couldn't have imagined. And when I first moved in this house, my guide suggested that I study with my mentor for house therapy or feng shui. And it is literally a divine intervention that I did that, because I was able then, with Amanda Gibby Peters, to understand, with my specific kind of house, the energetics you get with this kind of house are that one person does well, one person goes downhill. One person makes money, the other person doesn't make money. Um, this kind of house is the house that leads to divorce more than any other kind of house. And
Wow.
it's because it's a split level. Like, our house is speaking metaphorically to us all of the time.
Oh,
It's a
wow.
split in many, many ways. And so now I'm almost here for 3 years. I have reconciled, done so much shui here, you can't even believe it. And my business is finally evened out. And there are other factors around that, because I created social impact business during that time, which is the interface of capitalism and racism. And so there were other factors that were in my field that contributed to this, but also even the intersection of the split of capitalism and racism contributing to each other, that is mirrored in my house. It was mirrored in my
Wow.
business. It was mirrored in my house. It was mirrored in my field. Um, so having Shui literally helped me more than anything, because prior to Shui, I would have thought this is my fault. I
Yeah.
did this.
Yeah.
And with Shui, you learn that there's three kind of pots of contributing factors to how you live. One is your human luck, which is what we were talking about, like worthiness, shame work, somatic
Yeah.
work. Um, then we have heavenly luck or cosmic luck, which is ancestors, karma, spirit guides. If you're religious, God, the mystery. Then
Mhm.
we have earthly luck. And even though I did sacred ceremony, I understood land, I did not understand the house. And so fortifying and mitigating all the things that this house has gone through, we call it the predecessor cheat. The predecessor who lived in this house became a recluse, and her life also went up and down.
Mm.
So so many things were in this house that were shut down. Like she had bushes that were above the windows. She shut herself in. There were trees growing out of the roof. So all of that energy was in the house, even though this house was flipped. When I bought it, it was beautiful. All of the energy of that woman and her life lived experience
It's
and the
still
split
there.
level of the house was in the house. And
Wow.
I didn't know that I was stepping into that soup, which was nothing to do with mindset work. Nothing to do with
Soup. It was a soup.
it
I
was a
love
soup.
that. That's a great metaphor for it too. Because
Yeah.
yeah,
Was it a soup or more of a stew? Because it sounds more like a stew.
right.
It was a goulash. We didn't know all
Okay.
the ingredients.
Oh, yeah.
We didn't know all the ingredients in there. Um, and so what I would recommend when you go to your new home is the first thing we do is to find out the home's name. You build a relationship. Second thing is you want to clear it. You want to energetically clear it. You want to talk with the land. You want to get to know your land. You want to know the indigenous wisdom keepers. And also I'm guessing many of your listeners are from America and many parts of the world. We want to recognize the enslaved people that have lived there and worked the
Yeah.
land.
Yeah.
Um, and that will make a world of difference, no matter if you're an entrepreneur or not.
Right.
Just having those basics with the home and the land,
Mhm.
your eyes will be more wide open around what, like, this is the person I was before I moved in this house. This is what's happening after I moved in this house. That's
Yeah.
Mhm.
Some people just feel like, oh, I'm older, that's why things are different, or oh, I became an entrepreneur, that's why things are different. It's like we're
Yeah.
making meaning of things without taking the whole into consideration.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for
Yeah.
that little piece of, well, sharing your story and your experience, right? But also your recommendations to me personally. That I really appreciate that. Um, and so I want to give you a little bit of time to talk about. You did a thing, kind of like we did a thing a couple years ago. We started a podcast, and that was it. It's really is. I love doing this. Do you love it, Amy?
Oh my goodness, it has been one of the bravest things I've ever done, and I love it so much. Like life
Yeah.
changing. Love it. Love it.
Yeah. So Amy's got her own podcast now, and then she has her collective, which I'm going to let her talk about, and then you have another little tidbit too that recently, you know, helped you in your business. So I want to give you a little time to talk about all of those things. So what's your podcast called?
So my podcast is called The Soulful Visionary, and it's not a typical podcast. My guests are receiving a complimentary session. So you get to understand. It's really hard for me to articulate what I do and how I do it. And even people who've worked with me for years, like people would think I was
Well,
like no, people would think that they were like um, having substances for the outcomes that I get. So it feels too good to be true, or like really hard to believe. And so this was suggested by my business mentor. Her name is Sam Garcia, and I was blessed enough to receive a VA who has made this podcasting experience life changing for me. Um, my VA, I've had her for 2 months now, and she just told me this week that she is she'd gotten a full-time job, and I knew that she was a single mom. I knew that her young daughter was disabled, had a complex disability, and
Mm.
I left her a message and just said, I can sense that you've been praying and wanting to manifest this for a long time. And so I couldn't be happier for them. And also I was like, okay, come on, universe, come on, ancestors. Her name is Cassie. I'm looking for someone like Cassie or someone better. Cassie was magic. And I it's gonna make me tear up. Like, I've tried a couple other VAs, and it's not that they were good, but what I need is something quite different. And Cassie was very tech savvy. She was very like, just like a Virgo, like very structured, great at like figuring
Virgo,
things out.
perfect way to say it.
Um, and I'm a Pisces, so the Virgo Pisces axis is really important for me because I am structured around some things, but tech is very evasive for me. Um, so I'm looking for a new VA who's tech savvy, um, who just we're a good match. But going
Mhm.
back to the podcast, so the podcast I related to also my offering. So my offering is called the Soulful Visionary Collective, and it's my annual offering. And I updated the name based on what came through the podcast. Um, it is a 12-woman group. It's a 12-month journey, and it is a space to do ancestral work and to work through lineage, legacy, relationships, all of it. And it's a very diverse group of women. Um, Sexuality wise, age wise, the women are 40s to 60s. Um, Many women are based in the DC area, but some of them are in other areas. Um, there's always global majority women, and that's the term that we use globally. We don't use BIPOC outside of America. So BIPOC is confusing to people who live outside of America or who have immigrated here. So there's a lot of global majority women in the group. Um, and there's women from every kind of walk of life. There are single moms, there are people who've never had kids, and I have equity spots, but the equity spots are full. Um, so I have 3 spaces open, and weaving it back to the podcast. Uh, the first 2 women who said yes found me through the podcast. They binged the first 5 episodes, and they were
Love
like, "Oh my gosh, how do I work with you?" And I said, "I think that this might be the thing for you." And it just was like magic. And I can't thank Cassie enough. And I can't thank kind of the essence or Deva of my business to help nudge me towards all of this. And it's just
it.
it's been miraculous, truly, truly.
That's
So,
awesome. And you started with this group back in October?
so I, so that's a different group. So the group that I have in the notes. So I have another group I do as part of my equity work. So the equity work that I do, um, my social impact business, it's getting back into the flow, but the intention is that people that carry more financial privilege support the work I do around reparations work. So I give money concretely to a Black and Brown maternal health org in DC. It's called Mama Toto Village. And then the other work I do, I've been invited to do. So I work with, she is a Black Episcopalian minister, and she's an accolade of Archbishop Desmond Tutu. And
Oh,
so I was
wow.
invited to work with her community. And so it's a community of global peace builders, and they work in all different kinds of boards. Some of them are academics, some of them are economists, some of them are policy makers. It's a diverse group of faith and belief systems. And so I started working with them back in October,
Gotcha.
to make this group happen. Um, so the group is a 16-month group. And so I do fundraising for the group. I'm not paid to do the work, but there's different needs for the group. So
Mhm.
I recirculate the money I have from paid clients into that community.
Gotcha.
So that's my other work that I do. And we meet twice a month. We met this morning. Um, we meet for 2 hours. The group is 30 women. So
Wow.
and they're from all over the world. Um, and yeah, they're here to resolve their intergenerational patterns to be able to show up in their communities and the work in the world and have a massive ripple effect.
And you're
Not unlike
located
the
in the DC area, correct?
Yes, I live outside of DC. Yep. in
Okay.
Virginia.
All right.
Nice.
Um, so you've got 3 spots open to work with you with the collective.
Yes, with the
And so
collective.
what's the best way? We'll drop the link for the collective, and that's the best way to get information and get in into it.
Yeah, they can there's a lot of copy there, and then people can just email me if they want to join to get a conversation to make sure we're a good match, because I want to make sure
Let
it's well
anybody
matched.
in.
Yes, it's not just for the faint of heart. I would say it like that.
Yeah. And it's
Thank
not just here's the money.
Yeah, it's not like that, and it's a blend between virtual groups, and then we have 4 in-person weekend retreats at my home. So you get to meet Magic Villa Evie.
Nice.
I love
I have a
it.
magic garden. It's the picture on the front of the cover of the Soulful Visionary Collective. So
Very
Beautiful.
cool.
yeah,
When ended up during my second marriage, we bought a home, and I think it's probably the closest thing I've ever had to a dream home, like a big home. And it was a it was a huge house on a lake in a gated community. It was more house than I ever intended on having because I didn't want to spend my entire life cleaning. It was in our price range, and it was out in nature where I wanted to be. And I tell you, some of the happiest times I've had were in that home. But we had a friend that was a painter, and he actually walked to the
Oh no, it
other
froze.
painting of our home from that distance. And it was one of the most precious gifts. My mom was a painter. So I, and I'm fighting tears right now, remembering it because it was, you know, special. That place was special, and what he did was special. Um, so I do believe, and I feel like that there was good juju. That's what I call it. There was good juju. Had a
yeah.
mold problem, but other than that, um,
Love. You keep freezing, love.
and I believe again, there's that energetic field that goes along with that
Yeah.
is what embodies your collective. I just love that.
Mhm.
You thank you. You just froze in and out of those beautiful statements. So I think maybe if it feels important for you to presence your house again in the painting story, that's important. I really think that that's important.
Yeah, yeah.
It'll catch up
Okay,
on the
it'll
video.
catch up.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, okay, okay. Well, I'll have to catch the replay to get all those important nuggets, because I can feel how sacred that is for you, and that is 100% what's woven into this process. That
Very
is
cool.
Oh,
um,
And
that's
then
my
the
sacred.
indigenous group that your home has history in. What was that
Yeah.
again?
So it's called the Dogue Land.
Dogue.
Yep. And I've been looking the in DC, the main indigenous tribe is called the Piscataway tribe. I have been trying to meet a Piscataway elder for over a decade, and I was able to meet one this fall, or this summer, sorry. And I asked him, I said, on the map, my home is like this little pocket of Dogue land. Is that right? And he kind of had this big grin, and he said to me, "Do you know about them?" I said, "No, I don't." And he said they were like the boogeymen of the Piscataway tribe. They were the first group to stand up to the colonist, and
oh,
they're on this land.
beautiful.
So
Wow.
uh,
Wow.
there are
It,
no coincidences why I'm in this home.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Um, on that note, um, huge thanks for being with us today and spending time with us and sharing your story. And I know that it is going to resonate with so many of our listeners.
Mhm.
So I know that all the information that we talked about today, we will be sure to link everything in the show notes once that once that hits the interwebs. And we like to end with our one announcement or ask, and that is that we have sponsorships. If you're interested in sponsoring and supporting the podcast, we do have those. Go to ftcpodcast.com for that information. And Amy, it was a pleasure.
Yes.
This was such a delight, ladies. Thank you so much. Thank you
Yeah.
so much.
And we say this often, but we would love to have you back for a part two.
Yes,
Yes.
yes,
Yes.
absolutely.
Yes, I would love that.
All right. All right, guys. We will see you next week, Monday, 12 Eastern. We'll be live next week, and have a blessed and wonderful rest of your week.
Bye, everyone.
Okay. We're clear. Okay. So it says it's 94%. Laura, yours is only 53.
Yeah.
She's Amy is successfully uploaded.